thank you for coming out. Good morning, and hope you're doing well. It's going to be a nice day. Thank you, and thanks for joining us here at .NET Front End Day. Big thank you to Jimmy, Jessica, and Daniel, and everybody else putting this together. So Maddie started off with .NET MAUI and the tooling. How many of you are into Blazor? Heard of that? Okay, a lot of you. I'm going to flip it a little bit and talk about Blazor, and then we're going to mix and match MAUI and Blazor a little bit. I am on a Mac, so all my friends laugh at me. This is a really old Mac, so you can all laugh at me, but we'll try having a little fun. Okay, all right. And hello to the folks watching online. Thanks for being here. So this is me, Sam. I am a dev advocate for Progress Software. Hopefully, you know us for some of the things we make to help developers be a little bit more successful, like UI components for web, desktop, and mobile. Fiddler and Sitefinity and Telerik and Kenda UI and all the things. That's me pretty much everywhere online. Twitter, Mastodon, Skype, GitHub, all the places. So you can get hold of me. Hopefully we are coming out of our pandemic modes. It's so good to see all of you online, but really good to see you in person. So let's get started. I want to talk about, this is Blazor for desktop, but I kind of want to take a mobile approach as well. Let's cover what it means right now to be building, mobile apps and desktop apps, and where does MAUI fit in with Blazor. But we are all sitting on modern.NET, which is very unified. It's taken a while to get here, but you can build just about everything with modern.NET. The tools of our trade have come a long way. It's a rich ecosystem that we're coming in. So .NET 6 was a big unification. .NET 7 builds on it. .NET 8 is going to be even better. So all good things with modern.NET. Now, let's. The slides, by the way, are not important. I'm going to try to, just go by as quickly as I can, maybe 10 minutes, and then I want to show you as many things as I can. I might fail all over the place, but we'll still have a little fun. How do you build for mobile today? Again, we want to go to desktop first, but just a quick note on mobile, because all of this does relate to mobile apps. You have a lot of choice, right? Which is a good thing for developers until we have too much choice, and then we are crippled. We are second guessing ourselves. But do what makes sense for you, right? If you are already doing web apps, then stay on your web frameworks. You have lots of tools and frameworks to help you out. You can make things a mobile web, that's a good citizen on your mobile devices. You can make it a very good citizen by doing PWAs, which is progressive web apps. And that way your app can be pinned to the home screen. You can have a rich user experience. And you can also do JavaScript to make native apps now. But that's maybe for the JavaScript loving folks. But if you want to do .NET, then you have had some choices. Xamarin has kind of all grown up in the last 7-8 years. Now we are evolving onto .NET MAUI, and things are not just for mobile, it's for desktop as well. So you have a lot of choice. Do what makes sense for you. I always say it's good for us to be lazy, because then you can code share between mobile apps and desktop apps and web apps. So do what makes sense. So .NET MAUI has been an evolution. It's multi-platform app UI. The P is silent because MPAUI does not sound very well. MAUI is so much cooler. So it's got a lot of promise. And this is a slightly older one. Now it runs on .NET 7 as well, as of last November. But you see the promise. You see the benefits right away. It's truly a single project that goes to mobile, goes to desktop, all native. You have complete access to all of the APIs that you can have on every platform. Great performance, great tooling. And the internal architectures are changed as to how we reach Windows and Mac, and how UI components are rendered. So all good things. iOS and Android are kind of given because we know how to do that from Xamarin. But we are reaching Windows through WinUI, which is the latest UI and UX stack, and we are reaching Mac through Mac Catalyst, which is Apple's way of bringing iPad apps to the Mac. So all good things with .NET MAUI. How do you build for desktop? I see my friends trying to get away from the camera, but a lot of choices, right? And I'm an old man. I find this liberating, but I also understand this is confusing. Like, why do we have so much of choice? Because desktop, and particularly Windows desktop, has been around for 25 years. So we have had a lot of evolution. If you're doing straight up WinForms, WPF, UWP, or WinUI, you're fine. You have been on .NET Framework. You can take WinForms and WPF apps that are 15 years old, run them on .NET 6, run them on .NET 7. So you can really start modernizing things. But those are for hardcore Windows folks. If you want to do web stuff on Windows desktop, you can do that as well. You can do PWAs. We'll talk about Electron a little bit more. So a lot of choices. And then the last two are really enabled by .NET MAUI. You can do straight up WinUI, through .NET MAUI, or you can do Blazor hybrid, which is, bringing in some web goodness into Windows desktop apps. Linux and Mac, not a different story. Mac, we have had ways to reach the Mac. You just never had a lot of confidence before .NET MAUI. Now you can formally reach Mac through Mac Catalyst, and Blazor Hybrid is there as well. And for the four of you who run Linux as your primary desktop, power to you. You can slowly get to it as well. So a lot of choices. Any questions so far? Are we awake? Yeah. And chat room, if there are any questions, please let me know. How do you build for web? Because we do want to talk about Blazor. So starting like 2000 timeframe, 2000 2002, we have had ASP. I'm an old man. I did classic ASP, spaghetti ASP back in the days before it was .NET, and then ASP.NET has kind of grown over the excuse me, over the years, and it is truly a modular, nice open source web framework. Right, everything is great about it. It's cross-platform. You can choose your editors. It's really fast. The problem, however, is it is still, like, to me, ASP.NET was meant to be server-side tech. Like, you have a web application that's hosted on a server, you are rendering HTML, and then you're shipping it to the client side, which is not how most modern web apps are built, because you want to do more on the client side. You have strong robust browsers. So what's stopping you from growing client side? So in the last 10-15 years, a lot of folks who wanted to do modern web apps kind of leaned towards .NET being your API provider maybe, and then you leaned towards JavaScript to be making like SPA applications, single page applications, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Angular, React, jQuery, however you did, right? So that's how a lot of your modern web apps have been built, and all of that can actually move forward pretty nicely. Then came Blazor. Steve Sanderson, who works on the ASP.NET team, he kind of wrote the fundamentals of what Blazor would become over like a hackathon week, and I think it was like NDC Oslo where he first showed it off, and he just blew everybody's mind that this was possible. This is C# front and back. So Blazor obviously is very enticing. If you're a .NET developer, you get to write true C# that runs either as web components that are rendered on the server side, and you have a little client bridge or like a real-time SignalR bridge where you update the DOM as you go along, or it can be completely client-side through WebAssembly. WebAssembly, thankfully, is a web standard. Nobody owns it, and you compile things down to almost assembly-like bits that your browser can run natively. Performance is good, but you are shipping things more to the client. And going forward with .NET 8 and Blazor, you may have seen the team working on some things. They're trying to unify these models a little bit more. So if you wanted to, you could start off server side, so quicker loading times, but then as your app loads and works more and more, it can ship more things to the client side, and then it starts working more in WebAssembly. So good things coming with Blazor, and it's already very productive. Blazor is meant for the web, but it doesn't need to just stay there. Blazor is actually very suitable for doing PWAs, progressive web apps, which is essentially web app just running on a mobile device or a tablet. Electron, any Electron haters in the house? No, good. Some of you. Electron gets a bad rap, but they do their stuff right because it's battle tested. Like, how many apps do you run every day that are Electron apps, like VS Code and Slack and Figma? These are all Electron apps, yeah. So it's battle tested. Yes, you need to know what you're doing, otherwise your memory and resource usage kind of goes up a little bit. And of course, MAUI comes in and says, "Welcome to welcome to Blazor," because Blazor and .NET MAUI have the exact same runtime. That's .NET, right? So it's just a much easier match, but you can bring in other things as well, because MAUI gives you a nice modern web browser. So the way Electron works is you bootstrap and you have a Node.js runtime, and they ship with Chromium, the engine, so the browser can do its thing. But .NET MAUI says you got a modern browser anyway, so let's just give you a WebView and be done with it. So you have complete access to all of the native things. All right, 10 minutes in. I want to get done with the slides so we can actually see some stuff. PWAs, again, if you are building a website today, there is no reason why it cannot work nicely on a mobile device. There is a lot of guidance from Mozilla and Chrome, and Microsoft is one of the biggest supporters. A lot of apps in the App Store are PWAs. It's an app that works really nicely on mobile devices, has offline support. You can have service workers running in the background. You can have a manifest file that tells the app all that it needs to do. So it's a really good experience. And we kind of talked about Electron already, but you are trying to bundle up HTML, CSS, JavaScript into a desktop bundle. Electron, you do not want to do Electron on mobile devices. It's way too heavy. But desktop, it's not a bad story because you have deep integrations into what the desktop platforms will do on both Windows and Mac. So choose your poison. I think .NET MAUI does it so much better than what Electron did. So, and that's the story we have been trying to say with Blazor Hybrid. So again, Blazor and Maui have the exact same runtime. It makes a lot of sense to bring your web assets and then put them on mobile devices and on desktop, because now performance is so much better. You can reach all of the APIs that you could not have reached from a web sandbox. Any questions so far from the room, chat room? Are we good? Okay. And you want to modernize, you want to migrate your apps. It's hard for you to build apps as an enterprise or as an indie developer. You want to move apps forward, not have to completely rewrite them from scratch, because that's expensive. So anything that you may have been doing, WinForms, WPF, don't let anybody tell you that they are dead, because they're not. They're working fine on modern .NETs. You can in fact bring in little islands of modernness into older school Windows desktop apps through Blazor. And we have had XAML islands and other things that you could do, but this is so much better. If you have Xamarin or UWP apps, those can all be kind of starting to migrate in over to .NET MAUI. If you have APIs, please consider them running them on .NET 6 or .NET 7. Same APIs run so much faster on modern .NETs. And if you happen to do JavaScript, anybody do JavaScript in the room? Okay, some of you. Oh, look at you. So all of that can also move forward because it's a WebView and it doesn't actually care. It runs particularly well with Blazor, but it can also do other stuff. Okay, and we are trying to help here a little bit. Telerik is all of the .NET UI tooling, and Kendo UI is all of our JavaScript tooling for Angular, React, Vue, however you want to build your web apps. Okay, seeing is believing. You want to see me fail? Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. Okay, now Maddie showed you shiny bits with Visual Studio. I'm old and I'm poor, so I'm stuck on my Mac, which is fine. Visual Studio for Mac is actually not, it's perfectly fine now. Crashes like once a week, which is normal, but otherwise it's fine. Command line tools are common between Windows and Mac. They're great. And if you look at modern .NET, if you see what I'm running, this is command line tools, and it's going to tell me that I'm running modern .NET 7. This is way too small for you to read. And then all of my SDKs are also right here. I can just do list my SDKs, and I have everything from .NET 3 to 5 to 6 and 7, and 8 is coming out soon. So all of this is very approachable. There is no barrier to entry. You can go get the .NET runtime, get the SDKs, and get going. If I do a .NET new, I think, list, this is going to show me. Oh, this is too big to read a little bit. Let's try to zoom in. So this is going to show me all of the templates. This is no different from you doing file, new project in Visual Studio or Windows or Mac, and you get to see the exact same templates. Same exact ideas. You can just new up a project and scaffold it through these templates. These are the two that you really want to use if you're doing Maui and Blazor. One is straight up Maui, which is what Andy showed you, and then Maui with Blazor is the template that gives you that web view and the Blazor bits inside of it. So it's pretty easy to get started. Let's take a quick look at Maui and Blazor together first, and then we'll explore what that actually means. All right, where am I? Let's look at Maui Blazor Dev, maybe. And I have VS Code in my, as an environment variable path. So I can just load up this project, which is way too small for you to read. So this is .NET MAUI inside of VS Code. Works just fine. Not as, like Maddie said, not a airline, cockpit, but has most of the things that you need. So this is CSproj, has a modern SDK style project, and it has my target framework, so I can deploy the app however I want. And look at this stuff. All of this is now shared. Your app icons, your splash screens, your images, and your fonts, everything is shared, which is really nice. So only thing that you will notice here in Maui program.cs, as the app is starting up, this is now DI, dependency injection, is now built into this. We have had a lot of fights about this. Does it hurt performance? Maybe, but the benefits are way bigger than the little cost that you pay. Everything is registered right here. Your services, all of it is right here. So in here, you'll notice that it's actually bringing in this thing called Blazor WebView, which is a really smart component. What it does is it tries to figure out what platform are you on, because this is the .NET MAUI app. It just happens to be with the Blazor template. And based on which platform that you are, it's going to go ask the OS for a modern web view. So you're going to get the Safari, the WK WebView thing on Mac or iOS, and you're going to get like the Chrome or Edge if you're on Windows. So it just gives you that abstraction so you can render stuff. And then you can also do dev tools. Like no matter what type of web developer you are, you use Chrome dev tools or Edge dev tools, Safari dev tools, right? You can do that too. So let's go ahead and run this thing really quick. And I am on this one's a .NET 6 project. So notice how I can easily switch around between .NET 6 and 7. So let's go to a .NET 6 build like that. Oh, I completely skipped over PWAs and Electron. I'll show you that stuff in just a second. So it's building and it's optimizing and it's going on talking to Xcode. It's a native app, so it has to go do the build, and that's where your Apple comes in a little bit. And it comes back to launch this on whatever is your default simulator. It happens to be an iPad. For me, you can change it up to launch on whichever device that you want. Could be an iPhone. So it's coming up here real quick. It's a cold start. So out comes .NET running natively on iOS, which is beautiful. And if you have done any Blazor, this will seem very familiar. This is just the Blazor Hello World template. Like this look familiar to everyone, right? Just the same Hello World template, nothing different about it. It's just rendered all inside a WebView. Because if you look at the code here in my main page.xaml, if you absolutely do not want to do XAML, I'm old, I get it. Maybe XAML is a little verbose, but it's beautiful. It's got so much power and you got tools to work with it. But if you don't want to work with XAML, this is all the XAML that you ever have to see. This is just newing up a page, and then everything inside this app is a Blazor web view. I have no native stuff whatsoever. Everything inside of my Blazor apps are all components, and all of the routing, everything is built in. So I have nothing but Blazor in this app. But if you wanted to, you can mix and match some native elements with some Blazor elements as well. But once you have this up and running, here's the beautiful part. I have a native app that's Blazor powered, running on a native simulator, and I can bring up my browser. And let's see, where am I? If I go to develop, and this is the good thing of being in Apple's walled garden. Right there, I see my iPad Pro and I see my Blazor Dev app running. So this is DevTools. As I can see, just the same experience that you have on web browsers. I can point around, I can drill down, I can see exactly where my div tags are, and not the sidebar. I think it's in main. Let's go down here. You see that hello world? Like that's right there. That's the web experience that you want, except now it's running as a native app, and you can muck with it all you want. CSS, JavaScript, whatever you want. And we'll talk about JavaScript a little bit because Blazor does bring in the JavaScript interop, which makes it really nice. So anyways, this is beautiful. It's exciting because now you can, reuse some of your web UI and your logic and your validations and your styles and share them between web and mobile. I did skip over a little bit of the other stuff though. So let me show you that real quick because we started off with PWAs and Electron. So is this new with MAUI? No, it's not. I mean, we have always wanted to get web stuff working on native platforms. It's just never been very easy, and there are some boundaries to jump through. So if you wanted to do PWAs, which are good citizens of your website working nicely on a native device, I always point people to this one. It's called PWA Builder. It is a very nice tool started by Microsoft. The community helps out a lot, and it's a tool that helps you take your website, make it a PWA. Maybe not every website wants to be one, but what are some things that you need? It's going to tell you, hey, your website is missing a manifest file, so it cannot declare to the OS that you are special. Your website is missing some icons, so people cannot pin your app running. It's missing some service workers, so JavaScript cannot run in the background. So this will help you out big time, and essentially it's a web app. So I don't want to show you our UI, but just wanted to show you what PWAs look like. So let me go show you web stuff here. This is our Blazor suite. I'm just trying to show you a quick demo here. So if I keep going down, oh, no, it's up here, demos. So once this loads up, this has a whole bunch of Blazor apps in it. And if I launch this one here, this is built all with Blazor. Just trying to show you that Blazor is very, very well suited as a PWA. Right up here, you will notice as this app comes up, you get that install icon. You also get it down here, right? So the browser is recognizing that, hey, this is an app. So I can, I can install myself. And then it's very responsive based on what you do. If you go down to like this mode, it's almost like a, mobile app, but it's running essentially in the web sandbox. So if this is the lowest hanging fruit, like the easiest thing you want to do, go for it. There's nothing stopping you. You can package this up, put it in the app stores, and call it a day. However, PWAs are a little harder to monetize, and especially if you are interested in some of the deep APIs, like you want to use a camera, you want to use geolocation, an accelerometer, you cannot do all of that stuff because it's essentially a web app, right? So it has some limitations, but maybe the smallest or the quickest thing to get done is here. And then this is Electron. Again, it's battle tested. I think it works well if you know what you're doing. So again, Blazor on desktop or mobile devices, this is nothing new. So let me go ahead and show you that really quick. Where am I? So let's do step up a little bit. I want to go into my projects, and let's see, it's called Blazor in Shell. And before I actually run this, let me show you the code and as to what it does. Is my screen sharing working out? Okay. Blazor in Shell. This is VS for Mac, by the way. It's great. It's all redone, completely native app. So really nice now. Okay, so this is a Blazor application essentially. Nothing new about it, except it has a new NuGet package that has Electron.NET API. So I'm bringing in Electron to say, I do not want to run this as a web app. This is, yeah, I understand it's meant for the browser, but I want to run this as a desktop application. And you get a couple of launch settings. You can initialize a few things. You get, a manifest that kind of tells Electron as to what it needs to look at, what port you're looking at. Once all is said and done, like this is pretty easy to hook up as well. So in my application startup, I'm just saying, hey, use Electron. And then in startup.cs, there's a new browser window that I'm newing up. I'm giving it some dimensions, and then off it goes, right? So when I run this thing, if I do a .NET Electronize, I think, start. So this is, I'm using the Electron CLI tools, which is similar to the MAUI tools, but just does things differently. So this is powering up, and it's complaining that, hey, I don't have HTTPS, which is fine. I understand. I shouldn't do that. Still building. Now you see that last line, start npm install. That is bringing down half the internet on your hard disk, because why not? So Blazor back on desktop. So this is nothing new, but how it's done is completely different, right? This, if you do not know what you're doing, is it's a Chrome process that you are newing up with Node.js as the runtime. So if you have 10 different versions of that same process running, it's going to start eating memory, right? As Chrome does, right? So again, this is rich, and I have nothing bad to say, except I like the ones that .NET MAUI is doing so much better. So this is Electron, and again, you can take any web app, JavaScript or .NET, and bundle it up like this and then run it, and it's going to be fine. Now let's go back to .NET MAUI for a second, and let's look at a few more things, because it's exciting what it can do. So let's go back. Any questions so far from the room, chat room? Are we good? Are you all asleep? No. There's strong coffee out there. Okay, so let's go back to some of my projects, and let's look at. I don't want to steal too much of thunder from my good friend Gerald, but it's fun to show some real-time stuff. So let's take a quick look at that. So because it's Maui and Blazor are the same runtime, I can share so much of code, and I can share code across platforms, which is really nice. So let's close Visual Studio, and let's open this back up in VS Code, because it's quicker sometimes to just open up a new project. So here is a .NET MAUI project with Blazor as the runtime. Now you will notice that it does a few things differently when you start with that template. To start off, one thing is the project type has SDK.razor. So we are right away saying, hey, we are getting ready to render some Razor components. So just be ready. Yes, it's a native app, but we are rendering things in a web view. And the program.cs, you saw that. What you'll notice here is if I head out to my main page.xaml, I get that Blazor WebView. So that's my WebView that's going to render my Blazor component. Essentially what it does is tries to point you to the first component that you want to render, and that's main.razor. Then it picks up a whole bunch of shared layouts. Those are also shared. You get a www root folder right inside of your native project, which has your CSS or any of your static assets that go in there. Your favicons and index.html live in here. Index.html essentially says, here's my one big div tag inside of which I'm going to load up my entire Blazor application, right? So all of the plumbing is right there. This webview.js is actually particularly nice. We'll get to it in a second, but this is all web stuff, right? And then you have this little folder called pages, which houses all of your Blazor components, exactly the way you expect from Blazor for web, except now this inside of .NET MAUI. So let's go ahead and run this, and this should not look any different from the other one that we saw. Let me check. This is a .NET 7 app. Let's run this actually on Mac because we just saw iOS, right? So let's go back to running this on a Mac. If CLI will remember my last command, so I don't have to type. Oh, there it was. .NET 7 Mac Catalyst, right? Notice how easy this is. I can specify which platform that I'm running on, which is my runtime, and it just picks up. I can have .NET 6 and 7 coexist really nicely. So the build is done, and it's coming up. MAUI inside of or Blazor inside of MAUI running on desktop. So we have seen this for a while, but all of this UI is essentially driven by Blazor. So just to kind of prove a point that we can truly reuse web code and web UI and web components inside of native desktop applications, let me show you something really quick here. So if I head over here to a quick little website, friends don't let friends right click and publish to Azure, but I have, because it's super simple. It's just a text-based thing. So we'll go give it a second to load up here. Here you can see like it's running on, this is my URL. It's running on Azure. It's just a quick little hub that just relays messages back and forth. So I can go in here and I can say web said hello. And where's my Blazor app? Let's go into the chat room here in the Blazor app. And I can do this, and I can keep doing this. It's real time, so it's relaying all of this. Blazor on Mac picks up the same thing, right? So it's exactly the same code that's now shared between web and desktop. So there's my Mac saying hello, and if you go back to the web says it too. So quick little example of a SignalR backend that's hosted somewhere, and Blazor is talking to it because oh, none says 1 2 3. You can use this, by the way, and eventually it's going to crash. It's a tiny little instance. Somebody at another conference tried doing SQL injection on this. I'm like, there's no SQL server. It cannot crash. It's just relaying text. So what it's doing here is, if I go look at the code, this chat room is essentially what's powering it. And this chat room is the exact same code that I have running on the web. Exact same code. I got the div tags, and then I have a little bit of handshaking with that URL where my site is hosted. I'm trying to find that hub so I can communicate to it. This is my, if you send a message from that hub to this client, I can respond, and I can also send a message from the client back to the hub, right? So literal HTML and Blazor components running inside of desktop with the exact same code. With me so far? Any questions? Okay. All right. Let's look at a different version of this really quickly. And chat room said hello from chat room. Hello. Let's see if this is going to work. And this is where you might see some lights flicker, and bad things might happen because I'm opening up a VM on a 4-year-old Mac while I'm sharing screen. So this will be fun. In wintertime, like I live in Pennsylvania, it's cold, but I don't need heat in my home because my VMs and my Windows desktop fans are good enough with all the heat that they generate. But while Windows is coming up, we'll look at the same app now running on Windows, and it can do more things. And we'll give Windows a little bit of time to come up. But in the meantime, let's take a look at some other things. One question that you might have is, all of this stuff that you're showing Blazor running on natively on desktop or mobile, how real is it? Like, is it just like a hello world thing? I mean, does it do anything? Can I render any component that I write? And the answer is yes. Everything is welcome. It's not just for show. So let's open up this other project, and I see my Windows machine is up and running. So we'll go to that. So here's Windows 10 on this machine. Let's pull this up. And let's go to this one here, Blazor Chat, which is exactly the same app that we saw on Mac or iOS, now just running on Windows. Except this one does a few more things because it's Windows, so we have access to a few more things desktop-wise if you wanted to. Now both Visual Studios are clamoring for resources, but this one is up and running, so we'll give this a try real quick. Screen sharing still okay? All right. Okay, so out comes another .NET MAUI app, same exact idea, but you can see here that everything under like this line is my Blazor WebView. But I can mix and match, like that hello world and that button, those are actually native Windows buttons because I have the canvas, I can render native stuff, I can render web stuff. So this is actually the same chat room. So if that thing was up, it will say, let's see if it's still up, or maybe I closed it on the browser. You get the idea. Let's show you something else here. On the home screen, this is what's nice. This counter component, this is a Blazor component, right? And I can drive something on the native UI with a Blazor component. Nothing stopping me because it's just .NET code at this point. Blazor with MAUI is essentially Blazor server side. There is no server. You are literally on the same machine that's running it. So this is no WebAssembly. This is just literally running on the machine. So it can use all of the power of your machine to do stuff like this. There's a really smart gentleman on the .NET team. His name is Elon Lipton. He had showed this off a while back, and I stole like 4 lines of code from him because it's ridiculous. So if you look at this project here, this is my main.razor, by the way. This is using a stack layout. So everything in this stack layout, that's all native UI, right? But then everything inside of this Blazor WebView is all web UI. So we are really mixing and matching. But if I look at index.razor here, when I click on that button, that's my button click. Maybe I can make this a little bigger. Let's go 200%. There you go. So on that button click event handler, there are 4 lines of code here which says, let's create a new file, let's give it a name, and then we're going to do system diagnostics process.start. I didn't even know you could do this because you can now bring in using system.io. You can only do this on Windows because I'm running this, I'm tapping into some Windows things, but on a Mac, you can do, corresponding things. Notepad process start. What do you think that does? Launches Notepad, right? So let's go back and do this really quick. I can say do something native, and I can say hello .NET front end if I can type, right? And I can save this and I can close it. It comes right back as an H3 element, right? So in those 4 lines, what you essentially see is a Blazor app running on desktop, but going out of process, out of the sandbox, talking to other things and coming back, right? So you are on desktop. You have the power to do other things on Mac and Windows. There's nothing stopping you. You can pin your app to the taskbar. You can launch, and you can have context menus that do additional things. So the world is your oyster. So you can really mix and match things. Now, all of this is nice though, except I question, like, this is all inside of a MAUI app, right? Is that real to completely restart your Blazor application and put it all inside desktop? So you don't actually have to do all of this in one go if you don't like it. You can actually take an incremental approach to this. So let me show you a few ways of doing this. So this is a WPF app, and same exact story on for WinForms apps as well. So the only thing different here is we're going to wait for this to come back. It's launching. Maybe it's already ready. Let's open up the XAML view. So this is a WPF app started with .NET Framework. You can use the upgrade assistants, by the way, which are very, very nice for WinForms and WPF apps to move it from .NET Framework to 5, 6, 7, and it just works beautifully. And now we know that we are on Windows. So here, I actually do not have a .NET MAUI app, but we are reusing something that MAUI is using. When we say Blazor WebView, it's essentially rendering an Edge 2 on Windows, because we know that's the runtime, that's the WebView on Windows. So I can go and grab that NuGet package by itself. I don't need .NET MAUI to do that. So that's my WebView 2 NuGet package. All we're doing here is a docking panel and then a WebView 2, I'm pointing it to a source, right? This might be the dirtiest hack, but if you have a website that you already have that's internal and you just want to show it in a desktop application, one line of code, you can get it done. It's just the same WebView, right? And it's just loading up a web app inside of WPF app, right? This may not be very practical because it doesn't give you all the rights, but this is maybe a better solution. Maybe you have Blazor developers in-house who are doing a Blazor application. You want to mix and match some code, you can do that too. So here is a WPF app with some Blazor components inside of it. Not quite a .NET MAUI app, because we're not going there. We can just reuse a counter component, a counter razor component right inside my WPF app, because I still have that modern WebView 2 runtime, right? It's somewhere down here. No, this is a CS project I'm looking at. But in my dependencies, I do have, let's go down to packages, somewhere down here. That's my, where's my web view? Interesting, I don't see that here. Frameworks. Okay, it's not listing it somewhere, but it's there because I'm using it here in my main window.xaml. This is a web view, but here I'm just pointing it, instead of main page, I'm just pointing it directly to the counter component, which is the Blazor component. And this one does not have all of the Blazor pages, all of the styles, nothing. It just has a one Blazor component. And if I did not tell you, you would not know that this counter without any styles is a Blazor component, right? So there is nothing stopping you from just bringing in a Blazor component and dropping it in your WinForms or WPF apps, right? So might be a nicer way to just kind of start mixing and matching some things, and slowly start to modernize your desktop applications. All right, 10:37. I got 15 more minutes maybe before I get uh, tackled off the stage. I'm a little afraid of these two guys and Daniel, so I'm going to try to keep it short. So let's go back and look at maybe a little bit more of a realistic solution. I'm going to close this. So let's close this, and Windows can stay up. Let's go back to Visual Studio, not code. Let's go back to Visual Studio on a Mac. So to answer the question, like, is everything that you do with Blazor welcome? And the answer is yes, right? And I'm talking about any component that you have written yourself or any other component suites that you have brought in. And again, I'm not trying to show off our stuff, just to kind of make a point that you can run everything in it. This is a .NET MAUI app with the Blazor template. So you'll notice that I have the pages. I still have main pages.xaml. I have everything starting out the same way. But here is my SDK Razor style project. So I can do things to it as if this was a web project. So if we look at my dependencies, here is, let's look at this on a Mac. Here's my NuGet package. That is Telerik UI for Blazor, which is a web component library, has no business inside of a desktop application, but it doesn't stop me from bringing it in because I have a Razor style project, right? So I can bring in that dependency. And in my imports, I have a few more, imports here, some namespaces here. Maui program.cs, exactly the same web view that we want. We are bringing it in. And there's one more extension method here, add Telerik Blazor, because this is what wires up our Blazor UI. So we can, tap into the DOM and do things we want for Blazor. It's all meant for the web, but it just doesn't stop you from doing it on desktop as well. So here's my index.html. I am still bringing you that web view. And if you look at my main page, it is just one web view. And if I look at the first view of my page, which is index.razor, these are all web components, barcode, calendar controls, all of the web stuff that I can now render just as fine inside of a desktop application. Once this comes up, what I'm trying to say is everything that you do with Blazor, it's all welcome. Like if you use Telerik UI for Blazor, if you use Syncfusion or DevExpress, any other Blazor component library that you use, it'll all render just fine. right? Because it's a modern web view, it doesn't care. So all of the richness that you have built with your Blazor applications for the web, you can bring it to mobile, you can bring it to desktop, and it just works, right? So you can share a lot of code, you can share a lot of styles. However, here's the thing that I wish there was a template to do this. There's nothing stopping you. I think it's a little bit more realistic. So that's Blazor with some custom components. But let me show you one more thing here. Let's close that, and let's look at this project here. Now, there is no one Visual Studio template that'll do this for you, but there's nothing stopping you from doing this by yourself. So take a look at this solution here. So I call this Blazor everywhere because Blazor is what I'm doing. I'm invested. My good friend Ed is going to talk about Blazor, all the things. I'm not a web developer. I'm not smart enough. I like my native stuff, but I see that everybody has Blazor applications for the web. It is a little unrealistic to think that you are going to drop your web stuff and bring it all to mobile and desktop, right? You want to keep your web stuff going because you have written a Blazor app for the last 3-4 years. Why throw it away? So here is a solution where I have a mix and match of different things. First up is these three projects. This is literally Blazor as it's meant to be for the web. So you can do file new project. Blazor gives you web server side, or WebAssembly. I chose WebAssembly, and I also chose a optional hosted ASP.NET backend. Again, you don't have to. That backend essentially gives you like validations or other things like a service that you might want to share between the client and the server. And then this server is essentially not a server. It's essentially whatever is the backend for your ASP.NET backend. You don't have to use that. But this, my Blazor for Web client, is essentially my Blazor project. It's meant to be for the web, except it's missing a couple of things in here. For one, it's missing the shared layouts, and it's missing the pages directory, which is what Blazor uses to keep its components, right? So where is all of that gone? Turns out there's also a .NET MAUI project I've added to this solution, which is exactly what the template does, and it spits out the project, and it's in my solution. This one is also missing that pages directory, right? Because I want to now truly reuse my Blazor components between web and native apps, and I don't want to keep it in two places. I would much rather have it together so I can truly reuse my code. So here is my what's called the Razor class library, an RCL project. It's just a .NET project, but it has all of my Blazor stuff inside of it that's shared. So this is where my pages directory is. This is where my style sheets are. This is where all of my shared services and my layouts are. And this project is now being referenced by both Blazor for web and for native. So if I look at my dependencies, frameworks, I think, nope, projects, right? You see that it's referenced. So it's like a circular thing back so I can reuse that same project. So with that setup, here's what I can do. Let's go ahead and run this first on a browser. The web client is running, that's fine. Screen sharing still good? I'm quite amazed at my Mac. I mean, you can hear the fan, but it's holding up for its lifeline. Okay, it is running, but it doesn't bring up the web browser at times. You can see like it's running on localhost 5000, right? So if I go look at Simon doesn't need to jump. We are pro life, right? Anyways, so let's go look at localhost 5000, and this is Blazor running on the web exactly as you expect. However, it does have a little bit of trickery up its sleeves to know that, hey, I'm running on a browser, and this happens to be my window dimensions for my browser window because it's running on a browser. That comes from JavaScript, by the way, so it's really easy. But let's look at the same app now. So this is why it's so nice. You can just change up where this app is running. So now I can go in here and can just say, no, I actually want to run Blazor inside of my native app. So make that the startup project. And let's go build this. Actually, before I do that, let me show you a little bit of code here. Just to see how that sharing is working. So let's look at app.razor. We are bringing in stuff here. What we are doing here is both for the Blazor project for the web as well as for the native one. All we are doing is we are just pointing it to that other assembly, which houses my Razor class library. I'm just pointing it to the first main layout, and then I can do all of the things that I want inside of my Blazor application. So this is all standard Blazor stuff. Let's go look at The MAUI project, the main page.xaml is the same as what you saw, Blazor WebView. However, since we are doing Blazor, now my things are styles, and my components are shared. So let's go inside of my shared library, and let's find the CSS if I can. Oh no, I'm not looking at the right project. Let's go into inside of this one here. Let's look at www and CSS and app.css. This is what Blazor is pulling up, but now this style is shared, right? So this is a little bit of the CSS that's there to just show your Blazor application. You're not seeing me write CSS live, but I'll do that. Let's just change that thing really quick to background color of whatever. Let's say red, right? And we are going to comment out this line. Okay, so we changed the CSS, but we did so in the shared directory. So now this change should be reflected for both my native app and my web app, because that's the nice thing. We are truly sharing all of the things between web and native apps. Any questions as this builds? Any questions? Do you see the promise that you can really bring in a lot of the web stuff into desktop? Yeah, go ahead. Okay, so the question is how much of the server stuff? It cannot be a SignalR hub. There's nothing stopping you, but then a SignalR hub, if you have it locally on a client machine, then others need to reach it. I mean, it's running on .NET, so there is nothing stopping you from hosting a hub, but it might be just difficult to reach because now it's a native project running on one machine. But if you know the IP, if you can reach it, then there's nothing stopping you. If you have things that are very server specific, which I don't know if there is anything that is really something that only runs on Windows servers and not on client machines, that is the kind of thing you may not be able to do. But otherwise, there is nothing like Blazor wise that you cannot run. So this is not WASM though. It is Blazor's. What's that? Oh, so the question was, can you run WebAssembly and a companion app? Maybe is that what you're thinking? Web APIs, yeah. Sure, sure. So if you are, using Web API, the question is like, what kind of APIs can I host if this is WebAssembly? There is no WebAssembly here because it is running locally as a native app. So, I mean, it doesn't really matter whether you choose server-side Blazor or WebAssembly Blazor. It's the same Blazor components that are rendered natively on that canvas. Web APIs, you're not going to be wanting to host it locally because again, that belongs on a server really. And now your Blazor powered web app, even though it's running locally, has to reach back to some server to get its data maybe. So web APIs are not friendly to be hosted on a client side. But otherwise, this is not WebAssembly though. This is just Blazor rendered natively. Yep. So this app comes up and it's the exact same app that we saw for the web. Now it does recognize that, hey, I'm running on a Mac Catalyst and this is my window dimension because now I can tap into .NET MAUI to give me the window browser. I don't need to go to JavaScript. And this is the counter component, by the way, that we made that from blue to red. So it picks up, and if I pull up Blazor for web, it's going to be red as well. So really, honest code sharing between web and mobile, and I think this is nice. Now, how this can be achieved is it's nice too. Oh, hold on, I did hit a start again. Stop. Oh no, my build has started and it's going. All right, it's come back one more time. Stop that. Okay, so here's what I wanted to show you. This is maybe a nice trick to implement things. Just because we have shared code that's running between Blazor for web and native doesn't mean that it needs to do the same thing. In fact, you want those differences, right? You still want your web app to do all the web things, but you want your native app to do the native things, right? So here's where interfaces are really nice. You can actually define interfaces and then implement them differently between different platforms if you really wanted to. Hopefully not different between iOS, Android, or Windows or Mac, but different between web and native, right? So here, just to get the platform name and the screen size, that's an interface for me. So you'll notice that for my native app, this implementation is really easy. I can just go look into my services here. Here's my platform info implementation for native, because now I can just go device info. This is the .NET MAUI API. I can just read what device that you're running on, Mac, Catalyst, iOS, or Android. Window size, this is super easy because I can just go to device display, get the width and the height of my window, and be done with it. Because I'm a native app, I can pull up my camera, I can pull up all the things that I want on a native app because I'm running on a platform where I'm native. However, the same thing on web is not so easy because we are now on inside of a web shell, or a web browser. So if I look at my services here, this one is the platform info. Here I'm actually having to go talk to a browser service, which is essentially my hook into what's called the Microsoft Interop. And this is a beautiful thing. This lets Blazor working on your client side .NET talk to JavaScript if it needs to, right? But the same code can also work on web apps. So this browser service essentially comes back and gives me a height and a width, and that thing is somewhere here. It's window dimensions. So that's JavaScript essentially. So when my Blazor app is running on the web, I can tap into JavaScript and do these things, right? But otherwise, all of your web components, all of your styles, everything Blazor routing wise, navigation wise, it's all there, and it's all the same exact thing when it's running between native and web apps. Make sense so far? All good? We have 9 minutes left. Can I take 2 more minutes to show one more thing? And then we can do some Q&A. All right. Now, for the JavaScript folks, since you did say some of you were doing JavaScript, all of this is also possible with JavaScript. And we don't talk about it as much, but it's kind of fun to look at. So let's go somewhere else. And let's go to MAUI Angular. You kind of know where I'm going with this. And let's look at code. So let's just say you have an Angular app and you see all of this shiny things that Blazor is now welcome. Can you also welcome JavaScript to desktop? And again, this is not the only way you can bring in JavaScript, but this might be the most efficient way. So what you see here in this project is a .NET MAUI with Blazor. I do need the things that Blazor gives me because I need that runtime. I need that, that Blazor WebView that I want to throw in here. It's got all of the the Blazor things like pages and www, except I'm not using any of that. Here in my index.html, you notice that this is the index.html that Blazor likes to start with, but I'm not using that. I have renamed that, and this is the index.html I'm actually using. And this is the index.html that I get once my Angular app is completely built. So ng build with production settings. Now, once I build it, all of the artifacts of my Angular app are right here, including polyfills, any JavaScript, any runtimes, any styles. It's all right there, just dumped inside my .NET MAUI app. I'm not saying you do this, but it's very possible for you to pull this off if you wanted to, because the technology is here to support you. Let's take a look at CS Proj. This is a .NET 6 app. Okay, so let's go run this on .NET 6. If I can go back to .NET 6, yep. Oh, I closed my simulator, so it's going to try coming up from cold again. If SignalR is of interest to you, which I absolutely love how nice it is, it's real time. It started way back in like 2011, 2012 timeframe when it was just ASP.NET. And then when they did the reboot to ASP.NET Core, it was down for like a year before they brought it back up. And it's beautiful and it's super fast. I love it. And Gerald is going to talk way more about SignalR and Blazor and native apps talking to each other. It's a good time to have so much ammunition to go build these apps. Okay, so if you do any Angular, anyone in the room do Angular? Okay, it's a couple of hands. This looks familiar. This is Angular CLI app, right? But it's running inside of that shell because I have a modern WebView. But I can also do interesting things. Like you see that screen width and height. That is coming from JavaScript, and that's nothing stopping me. Oh, I actually cannot resize this because it's not a Mac desktop application, but I can read JavaScript stuff here as well, and I can do get device info. So now it tells me, hey, I'm running on an iPad Pro with 6th generation iPad Pro. My orientation is portrait. So this is a .NET MAUI API. So nothing stopping you from taking JavaScript that's inside of your Angular app and also tapping into some .NET APIs, right? So you have a lot of choices as to how you build your app. You can really mix and match a lot of web stuff with native stuff. And Jimmy and Jessica are getting ready to kick me out, so I'm going to go back and close things out here. Hopefully what you see is the promise that you can really consider a variety of options of moving your apps forward if you want to migrate or modernize them. We have so much ammunition to go build stuff. Tooling is solid, runtime is solid for .NET MAUI and Blazor. So the future is just going to keep getting better and better. And that's it from me. Thank you so very much for spending a morning or afternoon, wherever you're watching, or evening with us. And you can reach me anytime here. But thanks for getting us together and talking about all these things. So thank you. All right.
Thank you. Ural has been doing a fantastic job in the chat room, so I only have one question for you.
Thank you.
And that is, what is the recommended approach to making use of NPM dependencies in a hybrid app or a progressive app like this? I prefer Tailwind over Bootstrap, for example.
Yeah. I already have a mic. I don't need your mic. My bad. There isn't a good answer to this because you are bringing in dependencies. They have to live somewhere. If you are bringing in a true SPA application with JavaScript and you need your dependencies, then they need to be bundled into the app itself. So you can take my computer down and then we can switch over to the next one. But it's going to just increase your app package a little bit. But modern JavaScript tooling or .NET tooling is smart enough to do tree shaking and only give you the things that you absolutely need. So yes, your app package might be a little bigger, but there's nothing stopping you from bringing in those dependencies. And Tailwind or any SaaS or less, if you wanted to do that, that's fine too. It's like pre-processing, but then compiled down to JavaScript, and that's welcome. So
use what you love.
Use what you love. Just understand you're bringing in a little bit of bloat, but it might be needed for powering your app.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do we have any questions from here? Yes, we do have a question.
Is it this camera that I'm looking at? Okay. Hello, people.
So you were talking about islands. How is it possible if you, for example, you have like a React Native, so like not MAUI based web technology application, and you want to try to see if like switching to MAUI is actually beneficial? Can you just like put this little Blazor island into some other web tech?
So is the question like if you already are doing React and you want to embed a little bit of Blazor inside of that?
Or yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you can actually embed Blazor inside of Angular or React apps now. So that's possible, but you kind of started with React Native, which is a whole other thing, and that's perfectly fine if that's what you want to do. That is a native tech. At some point, you are painting pixels and rendering things natively. So React Native by itself may not be able to be brought into .NET MAUI, but React, if it's meant for the web, that is fine to bring in.
Yeah, but like because like the logic itself, like how the data flow is going on, it's already there. So just like to move that part and switch to the Blazor rendering.
If you have a React app, there is nothing stopping you from bringing it inside of .NET MAUI because it's compiled. You have a modern WebView that will happily render anything that you bring it. And as long as this HTML, CSS, JavaScript is what it's eventually rendering, you can bring in anything.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else in the room? All right. Hopefully this was not too boring. I just wanted to show you the promise. I know I jumped through a bunch of things, but hopefully you see the opportunities of mixing and matching things and moving your apps forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And we will be back in just a minute.